Welcome to How I Got Here, hosted by seasoned educator Jeremy Proper. This is a podcast of conversations with his former students discussing their journey from middle school to where they are today. Guests highlight their successes and the life lessons learned along the way. And now let's welcome the host, Jeremy Proper.
Welcome to How I Got Here with Mr. Proper. I will be talking to former students who will tell their story of their personal journey from Mr. Proper's class, aka Club 128, to where they are now. Everyone has a different path to get to where they are now, and that path may just be the beginning to where they actually want to be. In these podcasts, I hope to tap into the journeys that my former students have taken, for them to share their experiences with my current students, and for that matter, anyone else who is interested in seeing how hard work in and out of the classroom actually pays off. Let's welcome today's guest, Kirill Safin. Hey, Kirill, how you doing?
Hey, Mr. Proper, I'm doing pretty good.
It sounds like the police are coming to get you.
Yeah, I live in downtown LA in this old building on the 7th floor, and that's a wail that I hear quite often.
Oh, wow. So any of those people who are thinking about moving to downtown LA, you're going to hear a lot of po-po. So
Definitely.
that's an interesting thing. Thank you for sharing. All right. So actually, I interviewed somebody from New York City, and all we got were garbage trucks. It must have been garbage day. Maybe it depends on the day.
Perhaps
All right.
so.
So, Kirill, thank you so much for joining us today. And I'd like you to take a few minutes to briefly introduce yourself. Please include when you left the Don, where you went to high school, then college, post-college, and what you're currently doing now.
Yeah, so I went to John Estridge from like 2008 to 2010, and then I went to Atlantic from 2010 to 2014, Atlantic High School. And after that, I went to Stanford out here in California from 2014 to 2018. And the past 5 years after Stanford, I joined a aerospace startup directly out of undergrad. I didn't do like an advanced degree or anything like that. And I joined a startup. They were designing and building a rocket. I was one of the first 10 employees there. And I was there for 5.5 years. And I actually left just 2 weeks ago. So I'm currently not actively employed and not particularly seeking, but taking a few weeks, trying to take stock of what's going on, what's important to me, what I want to do, and then go from there.
That's incredible. It's funny because you have done the complete opposite of most people that come on the podcast. They actually want to wait until they get that new job and be like, hey, I just got this new job at blah, blah, blah aerospace, and you're the opposite. And I commend you for that. I think that's incredible that here you are at such a young age and you're taking time off because you're trying to figure out what it is that you want to do. You had a great 5+ years working for this startup, and that's incredible. And they've taken off. You were saying that you were the top, one of the first 10 employees. And I believe you said that there's like over 400 now. So that's pretty incredible to kind of step away from such a job. So my question is, following up with that, how did you get from Atlantic to Stanford to this job? What was your educational journey that took you along that path that got you there? Because it wasn't just taking underwater basket weaving and going, oh, Stanford, here I come. And then all of a sudden it's like, hey, I want to work for this aerospace startup. Yay. So how did that actually come about?
Yes, the infamous underwater basket weaving. I feel like that's something I've heard almost every one of my teachers say. Well, it's actually kind of funny. I was always pretty like clever and smart and didn't have to like work too hard in classes to do well in like, for example, middle school. And then I think it was like honestly 8th grade at Don Estridge, or I don't know what grade, 7th or 8th. And middle school is where you start getting report cards that you get physically and you take home. And elementary school is not like really a thing. And I don't remember exactly when it was. It was 7th or 8th grade. And I got the report card, and it was like, oh man, I almost got straight A's, but I didn't get straight A's. And it wasn't something I ever thought about at that point. It wasn't like a thing, And
Right.
then I saw it and I'm like, well, I think I'm good enough to get an A instead of a B in that class. That's ridiculous. I'm going to try and do that. And I kind of honestly like tripped into trying to be good in my classes. It wasn't something that I like started like wanting to do. I just like got a report card. It was almost A's. It wasn't. And then I was like, I can get A's. And so I decided I'm going to start doing that. And so I put in whatever effort was necessary to do that. And things came kind of easily. So it wasn't too bad. And then you get to high school. And I think I sort of got, I greased the wheels. I was ready for that starting to be really important, because now, of course, that entire report card for all 4 years, that's what's used in college apps. And I started really expecting and envisioning a really good college. And so I got to Atlantic, and from the very beginning, I was like, I need to do as well as humanly possible. I'm going to go to college. I'm going to do a bunch of clubs, all that kind of stuff. And so I think the most of my time in high school, and to be totally fair to any listener, like to the detriment, I think, of other things in my life that are also valuable, I put a lot of effort into school, into classes. And I think by the time I graduated Atlantic, it was like nearly perfect GPA. And then when you do the, HPA, which is with all the APs and stuff, it was quite high. I think I took, I ended up taking something like 16 or so AP classes, almost all with 5s. And then I took like 7 IB classes. I took 6 or 7 classes at a local college, at Palm Beach State College, and FAU. I took like 3 or 4 online classes, just a bunch of stuff, and did really well in all of them. And at the same time, I was doing clubs, which is really important in high school. So I did debate club for 3 or 4 years, was really actively involved in that, went to like 24 tournaments. I ended up being involved in the drama club, which was unexpected, but I participated in like 3 or 4 or 5 musicals and plays in various capacities. And
so was that something that was plays? Was that something out of Kirill's wheelhouse? Was that something you had never really done before, and you're just like, I want to try this, and it worked?
Yeah, my stepsister and stepbrother were both in it. I don't remember how they got into it, but because they were in it, it was kind of like but the parents were kind of like, we'll pick you guys all up at once at 5 when you're done with clubs. And so I had to stay with them till 5 when they were done with drama club. And so I was kind of just
you were kind of forced into it. Yeah, you were kind of forced into it unbeknownst to yourself.
Yeah, but then I really enjoyed it, and it was out of my wheelhouse. I was really academic, very technical, and so it was weird, but it was a lot of fun. I think theater is a really cool community, and I ended up doing lights and some stagecraft, and it's kind of funny that I kind of fell into that in Atlantic, because at Stanford I did theater as well. Is kind of how it ended up working out. So it really carried over a bit. Cool. Yeah.
Wow, it's interesting, because it seems like everything is a roadmap to something else. It seems like you were at Don Estridge, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what? I can get straight A's, so I'm going to work hard. And then unbeknownst to you, that led the pavement towards high school. And all of a sudden you're like, well, I know what to do. I just got to step it up. And for a good portion of what you said, you're literally answering every question that I have to ask you. And I'm just like, let him go. He's going to answer it. And you did. Like, I was like, well, how many APs did you take? And you said it, 16, which is incredible, and mostly 5, which is unbelievable. And here you are setting yourself up to be successful only because you were like, I can get straight A's in middle school. And then it just kept perpetuating itself and perpetuating itself. So then when it was time, you've accumulated all these great grades, you've done all these extracurriculars, and you've done everything you did. Explain the process of picking that university. How does it work in high school? What do you actually do?
Yeah, so before I do that, let me mention one more thing, which was a big part of also what I did in high school, and actually really formative, was I think it was freshman year. Atlantic didn't have a lot of clubs, and especially a lot of technical clubs, and I was a really technical person. My dad was a software engineer, and I actually did my first programming at Don Estridge. There was a class that taught Pascal, and then C++.
Way back.
And so way back. I started dabbling in that. And my first year at Atlantic, I was like, I want a programming club. And so we made a little programming club. There's like 10 people who would gather together on Wednesdays, and we would just sit and code. And
wait. Very quick, you started this yourself?
Yes. So
that's incredible. Well, that's
just wait. Just wait if you think that's incredible.
That's incredible. I do. I can't wait. Okay. Go ahead.
So it was in the media center. There was a computer lab, and after a class, just one day a week on Wednesdays, people would gather, about 10 of us, and we would just code. And sometimes I would have code challenges for people. Sometimes other people would have them, and we would just sit and try and program them. And
wait. The only thing that's coming to my head is the Social Network, where they were trying to get people to work for Facebook. Is it something like that?
I don't honestly remember the scene. No.
Okay, they're sitting in a room, and there's like 10 people with computers, and they're trying to work out some code, and whoever figures out the code first, it gets the job. So it's something similar.
It kind of was a little bit like that. Yeah. So we were doing that. Cool.
Oh, man.
But the thing is, I think I got bored of it really quickly. I was like, I've done code, and I don't know, just us getting together in media center, once a week for an hour or two and writing code just kind of got, I just felt like we could do more. And I think it was sophomore year, the second year, that I was like, okay, let's change this up. And I decided I really wanted to do robotics, and I wanted to
Oh, wow.
not just do software, but I wanted us to build things mechanically, put things together and build mechanisms
Right.
and contraptions. And I wanted us to do the electrical part of it and, wire motors and control systems and write the software for those things and make the whole robot. And so,
Wow. From soup to nuts.
from soup to nuts. And in high school, there's this infamous robotics competition. It's the largest in the country. It's called FIRST.
Huge.
It's called FIRST Robotics Competition. Yep.
We
And-
participate in it now at Don Estridge. We have middle schoolers who go.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So it's a big thing. And there's another one that it's sort of like, it's more affordable, requires less resources, called First Tech Challenge. So there's those two tiers of competition. And we started with First Tech Challenge because robots are only 18 by 18 by 18 inches. Whereas First Robotics Competition, they're like quite large. And we didn't have like a space or anything and stuff like that. So just decided to do this, and you have to pay money to participate and get a kit and all this. And I was writing grant applications.
Oh my God.
Money from NASA, from the
And wait,
robotics
you're how old?
organization.
Wait. Back
14.
to train up a second. 14 years old and you're writing grants. Oh my God. For those people who are listening, adults don't know how to do this, much less a 14-year-old. This is incredible. Wow.
Yeah, so I think ended up writing probably like 8 different grants, and we raised around $10,000 to $15,000, I think, that first year.
Incredible.
And we got money from NASA, from FPL, from the robotics organization, all sorts of people. And, we just started building the robot. We didn't know anything about it. There was this new crop of kids because I was a sophomore. There's a new grade below us. A lot of them enthusiastic for the club, and they came in and we just started figuring it out. And we met in my garage, which was a 3-minute drive from Atlantic, or like a 20-minute walk. We'd meet in my garage every day after school, and we'd slowly start to figure out how to build this robot. And
you're like Steve Jobs and Wozniak, man, like making the Apple computer in the garage. That's insane.
It was a little bit of that vibe. Yeah, we had the garage door up, and you'd go inside and get food from the kitchen, and then you'd have these 2 or 3 plastic fold-out tables and these bins full of parts, and you'd slowly build the robot. And our first competition did horribly. The robot wasn't very good. That's kind of how it goes. Everyone was kind of disappointed.
Yeah. No one's winning right out of the box. You guys are pretty
Right.
much building the plane as you're flying it. What I want to know
Exactly.
is, did you have an advisor? Was there like an adult that was like monitoring you guys, or you're just like, I'm in charge, this is what we're doing?
So I definitely tried to take that role up. I really was excited about that kind of opportunity to like lead and to really sort of organize an effort, apply for grants, lead the team. So overwhelmingly, like that was a big part of what I did. And that's kind of the answer. Of course, though, like you can't be entirely unsupported. So like my dad was a really involved person. He just like, if we needed something, he'd help out. He was a software engineer. He'd help us debug our software problems.
Right. He knew code better than anybody in the room. So
Exactly.
he was your go-to guy. Yeah.
Right. But we tried to make it very student centered. So for, I would say like 80% of the time, 90% of the time, it was just us doing and figuring it out, including in my case,
working through the problems, trying to figure it out. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow,
and the grants. And then I was like making logos for us and a website for us and shirts for us and all this kind of stuff.
God. Oh my.
And that
I'm
first
sure
year,
that did nothing to get you into college whatsoever. They looked at that and went, everyone does that. Oh my
well,
God.
just wait, Mr. Proper. This is just the first part of the
there's
story.
more.
Oh yeah. So,
Of course.
and then the first half of the year was that little robot First Tech Challenge. The second half of the year was the bigger robot, First Robotics Competition. And my dad contacted a local industrial park in Delray. It's like, it's on Linton by where the Chipotle and like Sports Authority is. There's like a Shell gas station. And just kind of asked like, hey, do you have any free space? We have some kids, they build robots after school. And this industrial park owner really generously gave us a 1,000 square foot warehouse to work in for free.
What?
And
oh my God. That's
and
insane.
So we brought I think we had a guy on the team named Jonathan, and he brought his own miter saw, his own drill press, tools from his house.
My God.
The rest of us brought some tools as well, fold out tables, laptops. And the second half of the year, after that, the fall of the little robot is this big robot. And man, it's a whole different ball game. You really have to like be buying metal, drilling it, cutting it, screwing it together.
Yeah.
All sorts
you
of
guys
stuff.
Are You're now a fabrication place. You're literally making it from scratch.
Yep. And we had another guy get involved, this guy named Scooter, who helped us out quite a bit as well. He had been involved in other robotics teams who did this competition. And so he helped give us a little bit of a starting run there. But that same robot, that same year, like we just didn't do too well. I think we were new and we were figuring things out and all this. But for the next year, I think there's a number of us that were really like, we can do really well. We know why we didn't do well. It was our first time. We learned a lot, but we can do well. And so the second year in the fall for that small robot, we built a pretty good robot, and we ended up getting it all the way to the state championship for Florida. Wow. And we got in the finals there. We didn't quite make it, but it was a really good run. And then in the spring with the bigger robot, we got like a bigger warehouse at that industrial park, courtesy of the owner. And then we built a much better robot this time. The game was basically that you have to shoot Frisbees into a set of rectangular slots. Some are like 2 feet above the ground. If you want, you can just carry Frisbees and dump them in. And the other ones are like 8 and 12 feet above the ground. So you have to like literally shoot them into those rectangular slots.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the slots get smaller and smaller too. So we built a robot that for the most part didn't do well at the competition, but there was one game where most of the robots, it's the field the size of a basketball court. It's massive. And so huge. A lot of robots, you'd get the Frisbees, have to drive across the field and, score close up. And there was this category of robots that everyone called full court shooters that was like, you just stand at your side, feed Frisbees, and you fire the whole 50 feet. Yeah. And
oh my God.
We had this mechanism that loaded them into the launcher that would always jam up. And that's what was our Achilles heel. But this one game, it worked flawlessly. And we shot 50 Frisbees full court straight in. And it was just like exhilarating.
Oh my God.
So that was a good thing. But really where this all comes together is our final year, my senior year rather. And this is where like we really got a lot better last year. We tasted success. And my senior year, we were like not taking any excuses. We were building the best robot. We were doing things as best we possibly could. And we were really sharp. We had a really great group. We had a really well-oiled organization, really well-oiled team. And again, we're still like after school every single day, 5 days a week, driving, and most weekends, driving to some warehouse that we got somewhere and working on these robots. And we ended up winning first place at the first local competition and the second and the third. And then we went to states and we won states. And then we went to the Southern U.S. Division Super Regional. And I don't know if we won that one, but if we didn't win, then we got like semifinals or something, which still advances you. And then we went to the World Championship. And then we won. We won the World Championship.
You won the World Championship?
2014 First Tech Challenge, we won that World Championship.
That is unbelievable. From a little club that was started at Atlantic High School by this guy. Oh my God, that's incredible. Right. What a story. Oh my God. Now, my question is, does this club still exist?
It did for a bit, but the tough thing was towards the end, so the year after I left, the club was very much alive and it was just successful as it was the last year. So one of the guys that was really involved, this guy named Cross, he took over the mantle and killed it just as much as he did the year that I was there. And they went to Worlds again and they dominated all the way up to Worlds again. And at Worlds, there was a bad referee call and they don't do video replays. And so we actually got screwed basically. It should have been another world. Yeah, it should have been another world victory.
It's a tech conference challenge. Why do they not have, let's go to the videotape? Come on.
I know. It is crazy.
That's terrible. What a letdown.
Yeah, but then after that, the entire team was pretty much all seniors. It just kind of fizzled out. But there was a lot of other stuff that happened. I think at this point things have really phased out. But in addition to just doing the robots and the team, which was exhilarating and fun, and we were building stuff, we also started this like 501c3 nonprofit altogether. And we started a series of robotics leagues in Delray Beach and Boca Raton. And 2 or 3 days a week, we'd meet at like a library or like a co-working space, and kids would come in and we would teach them robotics. And
Oh,
that
that's awesome.
became,
Giving back to the community for what you
yeah.
love to do to other kids.
Yep.
Wow.
And it became a really big thing. And that continued for a few years after I had left, because it was led partially, we were really involved in setting it up. And then Scooter and my dad and some other adults who lived there were involved in it and kept it going. And I think in all, there's probably around 1,000 kids who went through that program over the years.
Wow, that's incredible. So was it kind of like a makerspace lab kind of place? Was that the idea?
Yeah, I think that was the initial idea, was that it was both a makerspace for adults and then also robotics. It ended up being just robotics for kids. And that was like throughout the year. It was like you come in a few days a week, you build robots, and essentially it's kids doing the same competitions we did, but they just have a common space where they can all come together and work on it, as opposed to like we did it ad hoc, kind of in a warehouse we found, just us. Then in the summers, we ran summer camps where we would teach 3D modeling, circuit design, software, anything you need to really, we'd have 3D printers and everyone would be 3D printing stuff and building robots and making underwater drones. And we have a pool we would play in, that kind of thing. So it was like a pretty extensive program.
That's incredible. Yeah. That's incredible. And you're giving back to kids who like to do what you do, but there's really no space for them to do that. And here all of a sudden, that's why I'm sure it blew up, because, I mean, how many Kirills are there out there who wish they could do that and there wasn't an actual space for them to do it in, and you basically made it. You're like, well, we had this club, we won worlds, why don't we give other kids the chance? Okay, maybe they're not going to get the chance to do it with us, but once they get to high school, they already know what to do and they can do it. That's just incredible. That's an unbelievable story, man. You really gave back, and especially in an area that you love to do. And finding other little versions of yourself to go, hey, this didn't exist when I was your age, so I made it. Now I'm going to let you do it. That's unbelievable. That's one heck of a story. Oh my God.
Anyways, so that's actually the end of the what I did in high school. I forgot. You had a different question, I think.
Yeah, it's fine. I love the direction that it went. That's so awesome. So going along with all this stuff and going from the educational aspect, when did you personally get that inspiration for learning? How old were you, and what was the catalyst that really springboarded you into going, I like learning. Learning is my jam?
It's hard to answer that, because I really do feel a little bit like I tripped into things academically, but in general, in terms of learning, I was just always really curious about, more than anything, how the world worked is what I was curious about. And when I say that right now, what I really mean is when I was younger, in middle school, elementary school, really middle school probably is where it started, I was really focused on how the world worked. And by that, I mean physics, science, engineering, mathematics, the things that to me felt like they underpinned how all of these modern marvels function. I was so curious, wanted to see how close I could come to understanding all that stuff. And I think that curiosity is really the big thing. And do you remember Mr. Reinhardt at Don Esther's at the time?
Of course, one of my favorite science teachers of all time.
Yeah. So he was an incredible teacher, and he really was basically giving us exactly what I had just described to you, in all sorts of different scientific and physics arenas. And so I think that was really exciting. And I think around that time, though, there was everything else always is a part of it. So for example, let me give you a U.S. history example. For example, in your class, we're learning about U.S. history, and I was always inspired by great names in U.S. history who did things like builds the Erie Canal, or this particular big name in business, or this particular politician, and this idea of just doing important, hard, great things. I was always really inspired by examples in history of that. And I think you see that, and it's obvious that if you ever want to do something really great and inspiring or challenging, that you need to know a lot to do that, and you have to build a lot of core capacities and competencies. And so I think that made me focus on actually doing that,
Yeah. No, but you're learning through others, but what's even greater is that you're becoming them. that you said these people became great things, and I was able to do that well because you were willing to put in the hard work and do it. Because I'm sure starting this robotics club wasn't easy. Finding people to do it, getting all these things, like looking back in hindsight, like everything just seemed to fall into place. But 14-year-old Kirill was probably like, oh my gosh, how is this going to happen? And now you're looking back at it going, oh yeah, that worked out pretty well.
The thing is, it's funny you say that, because the robotics club, and the way I remember it more than anything, is a kind of blind optimism. I was just like, this is going to work. We're going to be really good. I'm going to have no problem doing this. And definitely there were things along the way that were hard, but I think never in the moment of them was I like, oh, this is hard. I was just always just like, I'm doing this. This is exciting. This is what I want to be doing. And more than anything, I think what I credit the robotics thing with is like, I did this thing, and I don't think I ever had like a goalpost of like, let's win the world championship. But I started this thing. It was literally nothing. We just wanted to build robots and learn and get better and be really good at it. And in that, we built an organization, a team. We learned mechanical engineering. We did electrical work. We did software development. We did 3D printing. We did fabrication. We did grant solicitation. We made a website. We made a team brand. So many things came together. And in the beginning of that, there was no particular goal in mind. There was just, let's start doing this. But the one thing that I felt the entire time was there was no fear of failure. There was just like, we're doing this. We're excited about it. And it's going to work great. And then for that to culminate as a senior in high school in winning the world championship, to be honest with you, it sets you up with this sense of like, okay, clearly, if you want to do something and you really believe you can do it, that's exactly what happens. And
I think a lot of it boils down. I think a lot of it boils down with the fact that this wasn't a job. This wasn't make or break. If this doesn't work, I'm not going to eat. I can't pay my rent. You were a kid. So you had this pie in the sky idea of, I can make this work because I'm a kid. I'm going to make it work. I don't have to say, okay, I have to get a job at Publix so I can make the money to buy the robots. I have to go to wherever so I can get the robots. It wasn't your career. And I think as a kid, we're able to put more of our energies because we have so much more free time. I say that to the kids now. I tell them, let's take out your screen time and see how much time you're wasting. Why don't you chop off 2 or 3 hours of that and, I don't know, do your homework or get a job or do something else. And you were just so driven because you found something that you loved so much, but you weren't tied down to a job where it's like, okay, if I screw this up, I'm going to get fired and I'm not going to eat. And then all these people are going to get fired. You were just doing it because you loved it and you enjoyed it. And I think the passion, which we can all hear in your voice. I mean, this happened a long time ago and you're still so passionate about it, which is amazing. That was what drove you, but you're a driven person. That's just who you are. You, whether you set actual goals for yourself or not, you're going to achieve whatever it is that you set out to do. And that's what's made you a successful person, because you are driven. If you don't have the drive, how are you supposed to get there? Sitting on your couch, eating, Lay's potato chips all day long. You're not going to be motivated to get up and work out or get up and stretch your brain or whatever. But you're like, okay, I want to do this. And you did it. And then now I want to make it better. And you did. But you also had a team that was willing to come along with you, which is incredible. That is just unbelievable. So Was there ever in your life a teacher that had that light bulb moment that turned on for you, where I know you kind of mentioned Mr. Reinhardt, and like, yeah, he was my favorite. I think he was probably the smartest person to ever work at Don Estridge. And he left to go pursue his PhD and then got like into a mental squabble with his PhD, whatever it's called. I don't know, the person that you work closely with. And they just disagreed completely. And he's like, yeah, I'm just not doing this anymore. I couldn't believe the ethics that man had. He's like, I just totally disagreed with him, so I stopped doing it. I'm like, okay. Wow. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty incredible. So was there someone for you that like turned on that light bulb? Maybe it was your dad, maybe it was a teacher. Was there someone that was like, you were like, oh, okay, I see this?
It wasn't any single person, to be honest with you. I think I've always just been really influenced and motivated by seeing different people exhibit different characteristics and different admirable qualities. And sort of like sort of a little bit of like taking the best of everyone and like just really being inspired by different parts of everyone. And I had a lot of really great teachers. What one teacher that really comes to mind from high school, for example, is Christian Perry, who's my physics teacher, and he just taught physics so well and so beautifully, and it was so exciting. I really loved being in that physics class and learning physics. But then I just have a lot of influences. There was my dad's been a big influence in terms of like my pursuing engineering, and then this guy Scooter, who was involved in our robotics team in a lot of ways, and then Mr. Perry and other folks. But really, the list of people who I would give is honestly like dozens. I actually can't point to any one person, because the truth is there's just so much to admire about everybody that's kind of how I've really gone through it, I think.
That's awesome. I love that answer. I don't think you're such a unicorn. I've never heard that answer before. I've interviewed dozens of people, and no one has ever said that. Usually they're like, oh, well, they start off with someone, and then they're like, oh, but this person in elementary, this person middle, college, high school, and I love the fact that you can say that it's an amalgamation of all these different people. It's not just one. You took the best qualities that everyone had to offer and said, okay, I'm just taking that piece. And that says a lot about the person that you are, because most people don't do that. Most people are just kind of like, oh, this was my person, and they don't see their faults, or they don't see whatever it was that they did. You're like, no, I'm going to find the derivative that works for me, take that along. You're just like walking around with a backpack, and you're taking all the good things from people and leaving all the crud behind, which is, again, an amazingly mature thing to do, because I don't think most adults can do that. So that's just incredible, because that made you the person that you are today.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think the way I would frame it, the way I think I probably actually experience it, is just that like, I'm really a little bit, honestly, in my opinion, too focused on myself. And I'm really focused on who I am and what I want to be and what I want to do. And so when I see and I interact with other people, there's qualities I admire, but a little bit of the lens always is like, I want to be better. I want to grow in the right direction. I want to do the things that I think are worth doing. And so when I engage with people, I really quickly sort of jump on the aspect of them that I'm like, I really want to be more like that. And it's from this lens of like growth and betterment of like, what do I want to be more like? And then just when you interact with people, it's just so quick and easy. You know intimately and innately right away when you interact with someone what about them you wish you were more like. And so it's very much,
but most people don't want to admit that, though. Most people don't want to say, I just met this person, and man, I'd really like to be like that. Most people are, because then you're having to be introspective and look at yourself and say, I have a flaw. And most people don't want to admit that.
Well, I guess that's where maybe I might differ here a bit, because I'm full of those, and the only thing I think about is what those are and how to correct them. I actually am really bad at pointing out my good qualities, because I don't think about them at all. I'm just super laser focused on all of the things that I'm acutely aware every single day are things that I want to improve on. And I like, if someone asked me, tell me about your good qualities, like I'd have a really hard time doing it, just because I don't think about those things very much.
Wow. But that's what makes you such a good person, because you're not fixated on yourself and like, I'm so great. Check it out. I have 1 million Instagram followers, blah, 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 which nobody does, unless you're super famous. And that's what's incredible, though. But that's what keeps you grounded, because you've been unbelievably successful in this short term of a lifespan that you've had. And you're just continuing to move this train forward at a unbelievable speed, which is Kirill speed. And you are moving in that direction because that's what you want, but that's what makes you a better person. I'm very similar. I have a really hard time taking compliments from people, because it's like, you actually noticed me? Really? Like, I actually do something good? And it's like, oh, okay, I know I do it, but it's weird to hear it from other people. And when you do, you have to take that moment and accept it, because somebody took the time to acknowledge it. Somebody took the time to notice it, and they said it, because a lot of people notice things, but do they always say things? That's why when my guests come on here and they tell me stuff like you just did, I'm always so amazed and complimentary, because you need to hear it. You need to know that what you did was important, and that people were lives were changed because of what you did. Look, you could have just said, you know what? I was in the club. It didn't go the way I wanted. It didn't work out. I'm done. Resume check. No, You kept doing it and making it better and making it better and making it better and making it better. And then you won. And that's what's incredible. A lot of people would have given up. A lot of people would have said, we don't have the money. We don't have the wherewithal. We don't have the saws, and we don't have the this and the that. I'm sure you ran into difficulties where you didn't have a press, or you didn't have a this, or you didn't have a that. But you made it work. You found out, somebody lent it to you, and you did it. And that's what drives your bus. And everyone has their own bus driver that drives their own bus. And yours is always striving for not better, but it seems like best. You just want best all the time, and you're not going to stop until you get it. And like when you told me that you got this amazing job right out of college, working for aerospace, and then you're like, yeah, I've done this for 5.5 years, and now it's time to do something else. Man, most people aren't going to do that. Most people are going to be like, I found the gravy train, and this is it. Regardless of the fact that, you were saying weekends, nights, and you were flying all over the place, and you're working. You're like, whoa. As John Mayer says, stop this train. And you want it to slow down. You want to appreciate what it is that you have. And that is such a remarkable and amicable quality of a person, because most people, they just want the prize. They just want, I did it, I got it, and if I just have to kill myself doing it, at least I have all these other things. And you're realizing, you know what? I got to stop and smell the roses every once in a while.
Well, I think the other big thing is I realized that what the prize is like really arbitrary. And I think like
100.
That's like probably the biggest thing is this job has been great. And as I've grown to the company, 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, it's not a big company. It's a startup. It's 400 people. We've been bumming around different buildings that have been near our original building. And we recently got this massive building. And for the first time in our company's history, in 5 years, we finally had private offices. And there's only so many. So they go to like vice presidents and directors. And 4 or 5 months ago, I finally got an office for myself, which is like a big thing, especially when you're 27 and you're none of those roles.
Enormous.
Yeah, it was a big thing, especially at this company. And I think my salary is probably for my age like 95th percentile. I had a really
Holy moly.
Yeah. And the company's amazing. It's like we're doing really cool things. We're building a rocket. We launch it from Alaska. So we fly to Alaska and stay there for months trying to get the rocket ready to fly.
Wow.
It's an incredibly cool opportunity and job. And I had given it a lot, and that had showed. I had progressed a lot in the thing. But I think 5.5 years is a long time. And I think anybody who has been an adult and works a job can admit, like when you're working, the days roll into one another, and then you look at the clock and it's been 3 years. And
exactly. Yes.
It's just like, what is the prize? And if kind of like to what you were saying, if people look at that job and say, that's the prize, don't walk away, you've won it. I think I sat there and I said, I don't know if this is the prize for what I want to do. I don't know if this is where I want to be. And so I decided that I had learned a lot there. I had gained a lot there. It had been an incredible time, but that it was sort of plateauing for me, what I was going to be doing and what I wanted to do. And so I wanted to take a step back and reassess, what is it exactly that I want to be doing at this age? What I want to be doing in general in this life? Like, what do I want to do? Is it achievement? Is it community? Is it solving big problems? Is it just being someone who, cares deeply about a small group of people and like is an important part of their lives? What is it that matters to me? And just to start sort of, put a stake in the ground, because you can just stay at a job and stay on that hamster wheel for a very long time. But I know
most people do.
Right. And I just know that that's not what I'm trying to do. And I have valued the past 5.5 years, but I know that I need to start putting some concrete focus into answering those questions and start doing those things, because there's no time like the present to do that. And frankly, I'm already feeling really old. So I feel like I want to start doing it.
Oh my God. Well, this is what the mark of a driven person is. They're never satisfied. They get it and they're like, okay, that was good. I did it. Next. And most people are like, what are you doing? It totally reminds me of my buddy Pete, who also is a computer engineer. And he's like the coding master in Boston. Like Boston apparently is like a little Silicon Valley for the people that don't want to move to California. And he was the same thing. He worked for this giant corporation, got stock options, all this crazy stuff, was only working like 3 or 4 days a week, making, ridiculous amounts of money. And he just is like the same thing. He's like, I just want to work for a startup and we can hit it big. And that's what I really want to do. I'm like, you have the cushiest job in the world. You don't really do anything. And he's like, it's so boring. And I'm like, does not compute. Someone wants to pay
Yeah.
me a truckload full of cash to not go to work, and you find that to be a problem? I'm like, I don't understand this at all. But everybody's different. Everybody's.
Yeah, I think you would be surprised how once you make a lot of money and maybe you make it for a while, you would be surprised how little that starts to matter once you feel like you don't have any purpose in what you do every day.
Yeah, that's what I got. I got a ton of purpose. I just don't make a ton of money. So I'm on the other end of the stick there. So I get it because, I hear you. I hear you. So, but this is why I do the podcast. So everybody can see that it's not always about money. I mean, I wouldn't be a teacher if money was the most important driving goal. I want to change people's lives. I want to help people. I want to hear about the story of Kirill Safin and what he's done with his life, which is unreal. And that's what's so incredible, because I'm sure that there's a whole bunch of you in the class who are just kind of like, yeah, that's me. And how do I do what he's doing? And it's just incredible that you can just say at this young age, even though you don't feel that way, but to me you are. And I'm looking at it going, this young man is so ahead of the curve. It's unbelievable. And the fact that you can just walk away from something where most people would be dying to have it just says a lot about your intestinal fortitude and the type of person you are. And I am just so lucky that I know you, because the story that you have told so far is just unbelievably moving. And personally, I can't wait to see what the next chapter is. No pressure. I just want to know what it is.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting you to tell me right now, but I can't wait to see on social what comes next, because it's just so amazing to me to see all of you guys who went to Don Estridge and then moved on to high school and moved on to college, and now to get to see their successes. But I would say you're the anomaly. Most people who found themselves in your position would be like, I'm going to stay here forever. Maybe one day I'll become the president of this company, maybe not, but this company's going to take me to forever. And that's not you, but that's what's so incredible about these interviews. You're finding out the deep inside how people really work and what makes them tick, because people are always like, well, why do you want to be a teacher? And why did you choose to do that? I'm like, I want to help people move along. I want people to grow. I want people to learn. I want people to experience. And then I want them, at the end of Monsters, Inc. Okay, go grow up now, and go do your thing. And then I just want to see, hey, look, you became a successful person. You're not on, Channel 9 News going, oh, look who was arrested today. So it's just nice to see that they're so successful and what they've done and that they motivate. But it's incredible to see a person of your young age with this mentality who's like, I'm now off to the next thing for me. And that's what's so incredible. And that's why I like these stories. So if you could turn back time to your 8th grade self and give 8th grade Kirill some advice, what would you tell him?
That's a great one. I think a lot about my childhood and the things I didn't do and ways I would change it. So that's it's a good question. I think if I had to come up with what that is, it would be to pause and listen a lot more, to question your own perspective and lens far more than anything, really, just to listen, just to let people speak their mind, to really munch on that, to be empathetic, to ask questions. I think in middle school at that age, and then even through high school, like you really have got your way of thinking about things, and you've got not a lot of reasons to change that. And I think it's really easy to stick to that stuff. And I realized, looking back on my life, that I could be at this position of where I'm at right now, and with my worldview and my way of going about things, I could have been here a few years faster. And the only reason I haven't is because there were many years where I stuck to my guns. And when people would speak, you're not really listening, you're hearing, and hearing is not the same as listening. So exactly. I was hearing what people were saying, but I wasn't listening to them. And I did that for years and years. I did that in middle school. I did that in high school. I did that for a lot of college. And when you go to college like Stanford, with a bunch of incredible people who all have incredibly well-educated, good, important things to say and you're not listening to any of them, you're really doing yourself a disservice. So, and it's really hard to do. So this is really hard to like tell myself in 8th grade and then have it be received. But I think more than anything, if you can start to really engage with others in a really meaningful, really substantial way, you will start to be able to grow and flex and challenge yourself in the ways that will serve you well and in the ways that will make you a really well-rounded, thoughtful, capable, dynamic, interesting person. And if you don't do that, then you stay, one-dimensional and you stay kind of static and you stay stale. And I think that's the one thing you want to avoid doing.
I think you hit on a very important point, and I can say this 100% unequivocally. Yes, I wouldn't have listened to me either if I could come back and tell my 8th grade self something. I'd be like, oh, man, you don't know nothing. And so I'm not saying that you would believe yourself. I'm just wondering, now that you've lived that life, what would you if you could go back? Because I know the same thing. I'm thinking this. I'm like, I wouldn't have listened to me either. I'd be like, who this old man? He don't know nothing. So now,
I mean,
I was
just gonna say,
no,
like,
go ahead.
it's kind of like, it's funny. I mean, like, I'm not an 8th grader. I already hardly remember what it's like to be an 8th grader. But if I tried my best to imagine it, and I was listening to some podcast and someone said, listen to others and be well-rounded, I'd be like, okay, that's a bunch of nothing. And
well, to an 8th grader it is, but to an adult it means a lot.
But that's the whole thing, and that's this one painful lesson that I feel like I've learned, which is there is a lot of this where like you should seek other people's thoughts, you should read books, you should learn, you should push to grow. But there is actually, and this is really frustrating to someone who really wants to be their best, who really wants to succeed. What I'm about to say is easily one of the most frustrating things you can be told. And it is that some things do just take time. Some things you do just have to get to graduate in college. You do just have to have your first job. You do just have to start paying bills. You do just have to bump into that one, socialist guy in college who you didn't get along with and really listen to him. You do just got to go through all of these different motions, and some of them just only happen at a certain stage of your life, and you actually can't make them happen any faster, no matter how hard you want to.
Right, of course. And that's what it's all about. I talk about this in class all the time. I'm like, hey, time to you and time to me aren't the same. And I'm like, do you want to take a guess why? And they're like, I don't understand. You're old? I'm like, well, that has something to do with it, but I also have more experience than you. Experience is what makes time go by faster. When you have gone to Europe before, yeah, maybe you're going to a different country, but you understand what Europe's all about. So you're not as like, oh my God, I can't wait to go. And when you've done things over and over, you get that first significant other, you're driving a car, you graduate high school, you're going to college, you graduate college, you get married. Once all those big milestones have happened, your time is just different because you're just not waiting for those things to happen. Oh, my dog's not happy. Mommy's not home yet. You're just waiting for that to happen. And I think that's why our perception of time at a different age is different, because we all see it in a different way. Stop being a pain.
Yeah. I mean, to put it for like maybe even the more like mathematically or technically minded, this is one structure that I came up with that I liked. It's pretty obvious if you think about it, but like, if you were alive for 1 second, then the next second is half your life. And then the next second is a third of your life. Right. And the next second is a fourth of your life. And the older you get, the next unit of time is an incrementally smaller fraction of your life. And it's sort of like it's just a smaller portion of your life, each additional minute. And so as you grow up and when you're in school and in high school and in college, there is just a whole lot of like, this is still all relatively new, but the more time you're on the planet, the less each additional minute is something new and something that hasn't happened before. And you can even extend that and say like the set of experiences, the set of things that I have seen or done or seen or not done, that's the same thing. Like if the set of experiences is this big circle, then as you go through the world, the set of that circle that you have claimed and trodden through and seen gets increasingly bigger, which means that you're more likely to retrod ground you've already walked on than you are to tread on new ground. And you should
most people aren't willing to do that. Most people are like, I just want to go and do what I'm used to, not something new, because new is scary. New is, oh my gosh, I could fail. Old, I know how to do that.
Yeah, I can't relate to that. I'm like desperate for that new stuff. But it's actually interesting because it's not like entirely good either. You got to like really thread the needle, because if you're only interested in finding that like stuff that the ground that you hadn't walked over before, then you just are never satisfied, or you're
Right.
frustrated in the ground you've already been
Right.
in. And you need to be able to be happy and see the joys of your apartment and your partner and your
You got
people
it. My
around
wife
you.
tells me that all the time. Be grateful for what you got. We can always want to live in a bigger apartment or a bigger house or drive a better car or have more money in the bank or own more property or whatever it is, have more Pokemon cards or whatever relates to your life these days. And you want to have that. But reality is we have to be grateful. You have to wake up or go to bed and every day be grateful for three things. And I've been doing that, and it's totally changed my life. I am so grateful for all the things that I have because I have them. I can't
Yep.
keep complaining about the things that I don't have, and reality is probably will never get. So let's enjoy the things I have. I look around my house. I have this amazing dog that's complaining right now. I have an unbelievable wife that, for whatever reason, has been married to me for 24 years. God help her. Thank you so much. And you have to be thankful for those things. And once you start to be thankful for what you do have, those things that you may have wanted seem to kind of gravitate to you a little bit better and a little bit easier because you're not so hell bent on getting it. You're not so like driven to get yourself there. And it seems like the road is a little easier when it's like, it'll come, I don't need it today, maybe tomorrow, but it'll come.
Yeah.
But again, it comes with hard work. And that's what you've done your whole life. You haven't, half-heartedly done anything apparently that I've heard on this podcast.
I try not to. Yeah.
That's amazing. So with the eighth grade question, the kids always want to know, they're like, Miss Barber, can you ask the people about their transition from high school, from middle school to high school, excuse me, because they don't know what it is because they're not there yet. They're just like confused. So what was it for Kirill? Like, how was his transition? Was it easy? Was it difficult? Like, what were the good, the bad, the ugly? Like, was there something you had to work on? How did it go for you?
Let's see. That's an interesting question. I haven't thought about that in a long time. I think it starts in middle school, but high school is where you really start having a lot of autonomy and agency, and you start to really, start really putting together this like book that is who you are and what's important to you and all that kind of stuff. And at the same time, I think there's a lot of, more than any period of your life, probably, you're really sensitive to what other people are doing and thinking and how you're viewed and all this kind of stuff. And I think for me, I had this sort of, you can call it either disadvantage or advantage, depending on the way you look at it. I was just like never super well tuned or keen on the social elements of what was going on. I was just like not really aware of what I should be doing or should not be doing, or how I should be dressing or talking, or who I should be hanging. I just like didn't have a good sense or handle on any of that stuff. And so it really let me just kind of do whatever I was doing. And all I really did was academics. And I think that, we already talked about, we know how that has paid off, but at the same time, there's this whole other world of like the social element of what's going on in high school. And I think that for anyone, I would just recommend the same thing that I kind of have been, edging at, which is just like everything is sort of going the middle way and is about balance and
Moderation.
And I would encourage everyone to just like, I don't know, focus the right amounts on everything. Don't go maximals on everything. It's a very interesting time. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of, different people you interact with. You guys are thinking differently. You're looking forward to different future lives. You have different priorities, and just be fair and well distributed and moderate how you do all those things. I think the worst thing you can do in high school, college, or honestly ever, but high school and college are really liminal points, is to go all in on one thing. I think that you do yourself a little bit of a disservice if you don't spend some of your time on academics, some of your time with friends, some of your time figuring out who you are, some of your time with your family. Like those are, you're 14 to 18, and that's the only time you're 14 to 18. And, you won't know it until it's gone, but it's a very special time.
But you got to give yourself some credit, man. You say you didn't focus on the social. You made your own robotics club. You weren't doing it by yourself, were you?
That's true. And yeah, people always
you got to look at. I'm just looking at it from the outside, dude. I'm looking at it going, wait a second. He's saying he's not social, but you made your own club and people joined it. So it obviously was successful and you guys won it. So you were social, just in your own way. Like I said, you made your own group of friends. Do you still, you're still in contact with these people, aren't you?
Yeah, the robotics group, there was a team. There was two folks in particular that I got pretty close with. And out of all the people that I stay in touch with, they're this one like group chat that I just still maintain. And we don't necessarily like talk every day in there, but it's always this group chat that I just know it's there and I message it and I know those two people are there,
See, but like I said, you made a friend group. You invented a friend group, dude. You literally found people with the same likes, the same interests, and then you went out and won a world competition. You didn't just win a South Florida competition, a Florida competition, an Eastern competition, a United States competition, a North American competition. You won a world competition and made lifelong friends. So you just did it the untraditional way. And I think for some of us, it takes an outside eye to see the things that we did. Because like you said, you're a hyper-focused person on successfully achieving the goals that you want. But in turn, you literally made a friend group that you're still friends with. So that in itself is exceptional. It's great. Don't sell yourself short. You have a lot of wonderful qualities. And I'm going to sit here and tell them to you if you give me enough time, because you really have done a lot. It's unbelievable. So what would you say was your most challenging educational experience, and how did you overcome that challenge? And did it make you a better student or a better person? What was it for you?
If I had to pick one, and obviously this is a question that, as with all these questions, you're kind of trying to answer on the spot. I think the answer would have to be that when I got to Stanford, in Atlantic and in high school, I was really academically disciplined. Like my focus was getting good grades, doing well on the AP exams, getting into college. Once you get into good college, certainly it's important to keep good grades up. But for me, going to a good college like Stanford, and that was really what I was working towards, and that had been achieved. And getting there and being away from home and sort of like the leashes off the dog kind of thing. I was very much like really suddenly and very exceptionally overwhelmed and focused on the freedom that I had. And I don't even know what I was doing sometimes. I was just like, I don't know if it was, sometimes I was honestly just hanging out watching TV because I needed to just hang out. Sometimes I was just out late with people. Sometimes I was working in the student group I was a part of where we designed stuff for like sort of balloons and rockets and satellites and stuff. And I was just doing all this random stuff. And really quickly, like my classes became like the last thing I was thinking about. And I had a period at Stanford where my GPA was 2.8. And
what?
Yeah.
It was from the near perfect 4.0 child to a 2.8. Woo!
Really quick. I think end of my sophomore year, halfway through, I was like a 2.8. And, no matter what, if you're coming from a place of like working hard in high school, try and get into a good college like Stanford, no matter what you actually think about, that makes you feel bad. That makes you pretty scared and nervous, makes you feel bad. And by the time I left Stanford, I brought that up to like a 3.3 or 3.4, nothing near like my like high school GPA,
right. But still coming from a 2.8 to a 3.4, that's amazing. That's a lot of hard work.
Well, and the thing though is like what I came out of that with is like you choose where you put your time. There's a lot of places to put your time, and the exact value of where you put your time, it really varies. It varies with what you put your time into. It varies where you're doing that. So like putting your time into grades in middle school or high school or college, the exact outcome of that and the value of that does vary. It's different. And in college, for me, I spent most of my time as part of this student group. It was called the Stanford Student Space Initiative. It was like this group of people who would get together, and we would design electronics and hardware and software for space related stuff. It was like the space club, so to speak. And I ended up designing 20 or 30 circuit boards. I studied electrical engineering. That's what I did as my major.
Wow.
So I designed 20 or 30 circuit boards, and I learned so well how to make circuit boards. And by the way, it's a little bit unbelievable to me, but if you study electrical engineering in college, you don't make a single circuit board your entire time in college. And
Really?
there's a lot to
There's no
electrical
hands-on? There's no lab?
there's hands-on stuff, but you do like little janky stuff with like wires and like capacitors, and
It's
like
silly.
you learn how this, like, the elements work, but like when you go into industry, when you go into work, like there's practical ways to implement things. And when you make a phone or a computer for a rocket, you have to make circuit boards. You have to make physical stuff. And
Wow.
I didn't go to my classes where I was learning all this theoretical stuff, partially because I was a little bit like, this is so separated from like what I understand, what I feel like I need to do. And I got lower grades, and I think that was like an emotional and mental struggle given how different it was from what I was used to. But, looking back on it, I ended up learning so well how to do circuit boards. I built incredible things. And, I think you asked this earlier, maybe you didn't, but the way I got my job that I just left it was like senior year in the fall, and it was a random email from that student group saying, hey, these two guys are on campus. They're starting a new company. One's a SpaceX alum, one's a Stanford alum. If you want to come by and meet them. I came, only one other person came, nobody came. And it was the current CEO and the other founder of this company. And they were just asking us about who we were, what we did. And I happened to have like 3 or 4 or 5 circuit boards that I had designed in my backpack.
With you.
With me. Yeah. And I didn't even plan for it. And I pulled them out.
It just happenstance.
It just happened. Yeah. And I had this one board that was really sophisticated, that like, it's a circuit board that tests other circuit boards, which is hard to explain, but it's very important. And so I had one of those. Yeah. And I had a board that was like a battery pack, and there's like designs you have to make for charging batteries and all that kind of stuff. And I put these all out.
These guys away because you pulled this out of your backpack, and they were not expecting this at all.
Exactly. And, it showed that I could build practical things, and I knew how to think about them, and I knew how to build. And the proof is the pudding, and it was right in front of me and right in front of them. And the truth is, if I had gone to my classes, I probably would not have made most of those boards. And
you remind me exactly of Buddy P. This is what stopped us from going on tour with the Grateful Dead. Peter, when he was in college, Peter worked for the Rutgers interlibrary system. They had like 8 libraries at Rutgers, and he learned how to wire phones and hook up computers. I mean, obviously, back in my day, it's a little bit different than yours, but he's getting all this hands-on practical experience that nobody else had, and he was just doing it as a job. He didn't think that experience, just like yours, was going to get him his first job. So we were going to get a Volkswagen bus, and him and I are very mechanically inclined, and we were going to fix it up, drive across country, and follow the dead, and do all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, he calls me up, and he's like, dude, I'm sorry, we can't do the dream. I'm like, why? What happened? Don't tell me you got a job. And he was like, I got a job. I'm like, no, the dream is dead, because I couldn't do it by myself. I needed him with me. And it sounds like the exact same thing. So you just this is what I'm seeing from my outsider point of view. You found a greater experience than the classroom experience to help you get to where it is you wanted to go. Just like I say in my intro, everybody has a different path to where they want to be. And you found your path by finding these groups, whether it be high school, starting it, whether it be college, joining it, learning how to make hands-on practical things, because not so much I'm going to get a job doing this, but if I do, I would like to know how to do it. And they're not teaching me it in the class. So let me find a way to do it. So you just circumnavigated the system. And because you did that, it was right place, right time with something you created yourself. And these guys were probably standing there going, wait a second. 2 people showed up, and 50% of these people are amazing. I mean, I don't know what the other person did, and I don't want to put them down, but what I'm saying is you are just basically whipping out the stuff that they want to see, and I'm sure they weren't necessarily expecting it either. And they're like, we need to hire you like now.
Yeah, and I think the moral of the story for me is just like, be really clear-eyed, and also just like every now and then stop for a second, check in with yourself. And this goes for education, this goes for learning, this goes for work, this goes for everything. You need to just like sometimes stop for a second, check in with yourself. Is this serving me? What am I trying to do? What am I getting the most out of? And I think a lot of times, especially when you're doing something that's not typical, which, for example, when you go to college, I mean, like the typical expectation a little bit is that like you do classes, right? Like the way it has been in high school, and get a degree. Like, to be honest with you, I actually like when I finished 4 years at Stanford, I didn't have my degree yet. I actually didn't finish in time. And I
Wow.
had to finish a few online classes during COVID. I got my degree 2 years late. And I think
Wow.
that, there's this like classical viewpoint, and whenever you try to do something that is not in alignment with that, there's a lot of friction, and it's even easier
Yes.
to just like stay the groove. And you really have to build a skill. And I really mean it's a skill. And it's when you have to focus on and think about and work on the skill to stop, check in with yourself, figure out what you want. Is what you're doing serving you? What isn't? And if you need to, realign. And if you think it's all good, then you keep doing it. But I think it's really easy to keep doing what you're doing. You have an inertia, you have momentum, and you have to be able to, more than ever, pause and stop momentum if it's not taking you in the direction that you want. Once you start rolling a ball down a hill, it'll keep rolling downhill as long as the hill goes, and even much more longer after that. And you have to decide, wait a second, did I want to go down the hill, or did I want to stay at top and take in the view? And if that's the case, then you got to stop the ball, bring it back up, and try again.
Most people are just not as mature as you, and they're not as introspective. I say this in class all the time, and I apologize to the boys. I'm like, hey guys, I'm really sorry, but this mostly, I'm not saying there aren't boys that do this, but this is mostly a girl thing. And it takes us guys, most of us, a really long time before we actually figure out how to be introspective and realize that. But for you, you're seeing it as, this doesn't work for me. But everyone is different. Everybody sees things in a different way. Everybody has their own path, and some people stick to it. Some people deviate to it. Some people are afraid. Some people aren't, and when the teacher is ready, the student appears. And for you, you're constantly the student. You're constantly learning. You're not immune to listening to ideas. Whether you appreciate them, like them or not, doesn't matter. You're taking them all in, and all your life, you're taking those important little pieces, which you've said, and you're storing them up for the time that you can use them. The time could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 5 years from now. But you're constantly loading up with all of these things. And that is an amazing character that you have. And it's so unbelievable, because most people, forget age, let's just throw that out the window. Most people at any age just don't think that way, because it's easier to keep rolling that ball downhill. It's easier to keep on keeping on. Just keep doing what you're doing. I know I'm going to get this paycheck. I know I can buy these things. I can pay for my rent. I can buy food. I can go out with my girlfriend. I can do all these things. Now, all of a sudden, you literally upset the apple cart, and it's like, okay, well, what's next? But most people aren't willing to do that because they're too afraid. They don't want to step out of their comfort zone and make life difficult. It's kind of like exercise. If you're not exercising and you're not pushing your body, you're not sweating, you don't feel tired after you did it, it's not really worth it, and it's not going to do anything for you. But if you push yourself, you're going to get better and better, bigger and stronger, faster, the $6 million man. And all of a sudden, now things are going to come easier. But for you, this is intrinsic. This is inherent. This is something that you just naturally do. And that's what keeps you moving in the right direction. And it's so amazing. So with all of this stuff that you've done, what was Kirill wind down downtime? I mean, obviously you said in college you kind of took a step back from the hardcore education, but what was like real downtime? Like, what is it that you like to do? What is something that winds your clock and gets you going that you enjoy?
Oh man, I hate to say it because it sounds like it sounds like not a good answer, but I in college really started watching a lot of TV, and I still do. And that's how I wind down. And it's not just a sort of like sit in your seat, don't move, kind of like watch the screen kind of thing. I really use television as an opportunity to be imaginative. So they say we're in a golden age of television, and I'm not a media guy, but it sure seems true to me. There's so much amazing stuff, and some of it's entertainment. And a lot of it, though, if you choose the right shows, it's really thought provoking. And there's things you can watch that are sort of like focused on a certain period, and you really have to tussle and interact with like what that period was like and what's going on and what's the discourse and that kind of thing. And then there's other times when you look at it and you just like get some kind of idea or get some feeling, or you see something you like, something you don't like. And I use inspiration because at the end of the day, like I have that my day that I go through, and it's I wake up, I do XYZ, I go to the gym, I go to sleep, or at college it was this, and during my adult life and my career it was this. But you see a certain set of things during your day. And I think it's actually extremely valuable to expose yourself to very different worlds, very different plot lines, very different interactions. And you can use that, and you should use that partially as like entertainment, but partially as like inspiration, partially as like examples and fodder for thinking about things a different way. And so I think that there's a lot you can get from media. I think that, more and more in this day and age, like media is, really commodified. It's like, it's all about making money on the media, but there are a lot of great writers and great directors making really thoughtful pieces of media. And if you engage with it that way, then you have a lot of inspiration you can get from it. And personally, I've had a lot of thoughts and a lot of ideas and a lot of just like itches I've wanted to scratch in my life that sometimes were dislodged and really activated by like seeing someone do something similar to a TV show or seeing something like that. So if you're predisposed to action, if you're predisposed to doing something and making something a reality, then media and TV or anything like that can really just be an example and an inspiration and something that's just different that can really help you get the juices flowing for what you need to do.
That's awesome. I say that all the time because I just recently started watching Nova on PBS because they have the coolest series about how the Earth was formed. And I'm thinking to myself, and I actually vocalized it the last time with my wife, and I'm like, if they showed this in science when I was in school, I might have actually liked science because I'm a visual kind of person. And I need to see it. And they're, showing volcanoes erupting and showing plate tectonics and showing Pangea and showing all these different things and how the Earth's crust moved. And basically they started like year one, 4.3 billion years ago, and they're moving forward to today to show where the sky comes from, the atmosphere. And I'm like, this is so interesting. Like, but when I was in school, they didn't teach it this way. And like you said, the media really is the message. And the way that the message is portrayed and given to you depends on A, I guess their budget, and B, how much they want to put into it. But like there are certain shows that I get so much more out of as an adult. And I'm not going to lie, I love TV too. My wife says I watch too much, but the things that I try to watch are very similar along your line. I'm trying to learn educationally from what I'm watching. I watched PBS and Nova. I watched the History Channel. I'm watching these things to help my teaching, help my mind, help me think and learn about things, like you said, that maybe in the past I didn't like, but now I'm seeing it through a different lens and I enjoy it. So I'm glad that I have a fellow TV watcher who's not just watching it to watch it, but to learn something from it. So it's a tool that you've learned to help yourself with, not just ultimately waste time watching.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's both, right? It's like at least the stuff I watch, it's like really entertaining. You just kind of just watch it and it's great and the plot line carries you. But at the same time, like personally, for example, I don't watch anything explicitly educational. I watch varying shows. I watch like dramas, period stuff. I watch some stuff that
actually. Oh, I watch everything too. I'm just saying for me, like I try to focus on educationally based, but I still need my Big Bang Theory laugh. I still need, shout out to The Golden Bachelor, even though I've had enough of that already. That's more my wife, but The Voice and even things like that. I'm like, wow, these people can sing, play guitar. It's inspirational.
Exactly.
So
it just opens up your world, really, is what it is. It's just like there's way more going on. There's way more ideas. There's way more creativity. There's way more imagination. There's way more writing. There's so much going on, and take it or leave it. There's really big problems with the way we treat and create media today, but it is a tool for us to be able to share different worlds with one another. And you can engage with that in bad faith, or you can engage with it in really good faith, and you can get a lot out of it.
Oh, without a doubt. So we had spoken earlier, and I was wondering if you could tell us what your quote was that kind of was inspirational or motivational. Was there a quote in your journey of education or life that you kind of fall back on to kind of keep you moving down that path?
Yeah, so I shared one, and I actually remembered the second one, so I'll share both. And I want to caveat this by saying that like these were quotes that I kind of used. I'm not a big like quote guy. They're like really helpful, actually, ways to like distill certain ideas. I don't like live by them, but I think these are really powerful ones. So when I was in high school, it was I don't know if it was 100 years or 150 years, but IBM had been around for either 100 or 150 years. They had like a centennial or whatever it was. And they released a video. And at the end of the video, there was this quote from this really influential chairman or president in IBM's history. And the quote was, "All of the problems of the world could be settled easily if people were only willing to think." And think was capitalized. And it was really just focused on thought and really just like thinking through our problems rationally, slowly, thoughtfully, convincingly, from an educated
Not
way.
jumping to a conclusion, not just saying the first thing that comes to your head, actually
Yeah.
taking the time to
Solving,
literally go through the whole problem.
right. Solving any complicated problem is so complicated that no one of us could do it. And altogether we can do it. But at the same time, it still requires constant effort, no matter how educated you are, no matter how thoughtful you are. And you need to engage with every problem with the wherewithal that it deserves. Big problems are big problems for a reason. And when you encounter them, it takes a huge amount of thought and effort repeatedly.
And ultimately, you had mentioned while we were talking beforehand that think in capital letters then became something else. What was that something else you referred to?
Yeah. So if you guys are familiar with ThinkPad laptops, they're now by Lenovo. They used to be by IBM. That's where the think from the quote became this big thing at IBM. And so ThinkPads or anything from IBM, nowadays Lenovo, is branded Think. That think was from that quote. And that quote and that ideology became a really big part of IBM.
That's amazing. That's amazing how it all wraps together.
Yep.
So now that we've just thrown IBM into the mix, as I conclude this podcast every time, I ask the same question because I want to know if people remember. So who was Don Estridge as a person? Hint, hint, it was IBM related.
I think he developed the first personal computer. Is that right?
Ding, ding, ding. Hold on. Ding, ding, ding. Yay. No, not the crow. There it is, the clap. I have this soundboard, and you'd think by now, after 3 years of using it, I'd know which one to press. I got to put like a big red button on this one because I can never remember. He gets credit for inventing the personal computer. Exactly. And he did it at our facility, which I don't know if you know, was actually a secret IBM facility.
Yep.
So that's amazing. So
that was something that when I was at Don Estridge, it was, I was like a software programming technical kind of kid. I was really excited about knowing that these were like sort of like former like, computer history kind of buildings.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if you remember.
It was a secret facility. There are people who lived in Boca for 30, 40 years who are like, when did they build that school? Because it used to be flanked by bushes and trees, and
it still is. You like can't see that school. It's surrounded by foliage. Besides, you see the tennis and baseball kind of fields beside now. But otherwise, like when you go to the entrance for the carpool, I mean, you can't even see where you're going. It's like a hidden place.
Exactly. And before it was the school, it was 100 times thicker. So I remember running into old timey Boca Raton people, and they were like, did they just build that school? I'm like, about 30 years ago. We bought it from IBM and converted it into a school. There was an IBM facility there? I'm like, where did you think all these people went to work every single day who lived here? Because that's actually why East Boca was formed, because all of these people who were employed by IBM needed a place to live. If it wasn't for IBM, Boca probably wouldn't be very much other than a sleepy retirement community, which everyone thinks it is anyway. Mm-hmm. So that's amazing. I'm so glad you remember that. And so, Kirill,
let me give you one more quote because I wanted to give you two.
Yes. Oh, that's right. You had a second one.
Yeah, the second one I remembered. This is funny because this isn't a quote from anybody you can find on the internet. This is actually something that I had a friend who worked at Lockheed Martin during one of her internships in the summer at Stanford. and she works at Lockheed Martin. And the guy she worked with, this is just some random guy at Lockheed Martin. And he sent her a goodbye email at the end of her internship. And it was just like this random guy writing her a goodbye email, but he wrote this one sentence and it really moved her. And she shared it with me and I really loved it. So it's this guy, his name is David Borlaug. You can Google him, maybe he'll come up as like Lockheed Martin, but he's not some kind of like, president or whatever. And the quote is, "The future will be shaped by what we build today. So keep building and build well." And I had that on my attached to my monitor at my work at my aerospace, the rocket company, for about 2 years. In the very middle of it, when I was designing the flight computer that flies the rocket. That was one of the principal things I did at the company, was I designed the computer that flies the rocket. And during the year or two that I was doing that, I had this up there, and it was just, I mean, it really is a really well put together sentence. And it really is true. It's like, what we're building today, that's exactly what the future is going to be. And so, one, we need to keep building. And two, when we do it, we need to do it well. We need to not half-ass it, and we need to put our best foot forward. And that was always something that kept me going in this past job.
That's incredible. What a wonderful way to end this. That is I like that quote a lot. And the fact that I've never heard it before and this guy made it up. That's incredible. And in your field, that I think is more prevalent than anything.
Definitely.
What you're building today is going to be our future. So we have to build it well so the future will be well. Otherwise, the future is not going to be so bright. That is so incredible. Wow,
Yep.
what a way to end. And again, on behalf of myself, the How I Got Here podcast, Kirill, thank you so much for sharing your life experiences. You have so many great stories, so many wonderful accomplishments, so many things that you shared. I know that there's somebody out there that's going to listen to this and go, man, this is what I've been looking for. I can do it. If you ever had doubted, if you ever thought you couldn't. So again, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your experiences, and telling everybody about your successes, which are seemingly infinite. And again, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet. It's been a pleasure. It's been great to talk. You've been a great host. And if ever it would be helpful to talk again, I'd be more than happy to do it.
Thank you for listening to How I Got Here podcast with Mr. Proper. Music provided by Miss Mata. Thank you to Patty Fernandez for the introduction. Thank you to Seth Proper for logistics and behind-the-scenes production. Join us next time for another episode of How I Got Here and more stories of former students and their journey.